Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt like you weren't really there? Not ignored. Not excluded. I mean erased. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Your mouth moves, but the words don't come out because someone else is already saying them. Someone else is answering your questions, ordering your food, describing your thoughts, finishing your sentences before you've even started them. Sounds crazy, right? That's what I thought too. Until that night. The night I was spoken for by people I didn't even know. The night I tried to speak, and someone reached across the table, touched my wrist, smiled, and said, "She's fine. She doesn't need to talk." And the worst part? Everyone else at the table nodded, like it was completely normal. Like I'd agreed to this. Like I'd done this before. But I hadn't. At least, I thought I hadn't. That dinner would change everything I knew about myself, my relationship, and even my own memory. Because the people at that table didn't just know me. They knew someone else, someone who looked exactly like me. Someone who shared my name. Well, almost. Her name was Clarice. Mine is Claire. Or, it used to be. Let me explain. It started with a dinner invitation. Julian had been dating me for just over 6 months. Tall, poised, charming in that slick, old money kind of way. Think of someone who smells like mahogany and secrets. He always dressed too well, even on casual nights. Always knew the right wine, the right words, the right way to make you feel like the center of the universe, but somehow like you were orbiting him. We met through mutual friends at a gallery opening. I was there for the free wine. He was there to buy the actual art. And, just like that, he locked in. For 6 months, things were weirdly perfect. He was intense, but attentive. Secretive, but seductive. A little controlling? Maybe. But he said he just liked to plan. I'm not proud of it, but I liked the way he took charge. Until he invited me to dinner with his family. You don't have to come, he said. They're formal. Traditional. It might be overwhelming. But when I hesitated, he added something strange. They'll be so happy to see you again. Again? I asked. He smiled. Shrugged. Slip of the tongue. The invitation came on thick cream paper with gold trim. Like a wedding announcement. Addressed to Ms. Clarice Wainwright. I laughed. Did they misspell my name? Julian took the card. Oh, right. That's a family nickname. They'll probably call you that. Just go with it. You'd think I'd raise an eyebrow at that. But when you're in love, or think you are, red flags just look like passionate quirks. He gave me one warning. Try not to talk too much at dinner. They're old-fashioned. They appreciate poise. It stung, but I nodded. That was the first time I agreed to be silent. The estate was an hour outside the city. Wrought iron gates. Long winding driveway. The kind of house you only see in movies where people go missing in Act 2. Stone walls. Ivy. Gargoyles. Yes, actual gargoyles. Julian was unusually quiet on the drive there. When I asked about his family, he gave vague answers. They're not like yours. They've been through a lot. They're trying to rebuild. Rebuild what? I asked. But he just squeezed my hand and said, "You'll see." There were 17 people at that table. Long wooden dining room. Crystal chandeliers. The kind of silence that hums. The kind that feels intentional. Everyone turned to look at me when I entered. Not in that "who's the new girl" way. No, this was different. They looked at me like I was returning. Like they'd been waiting. One of the women, sharp red lips, pearls, the kind of face that could cut, walked up to me and said, "Clarice. My God. Look at you. You haven't aged a day." She kissed both my cheeks. I froze. "I'm Claire," I corrected. She tilted her head. "Of course you are." We sat down. Name cards guided every seat. Mine said Clarice. Julian sat 2 seats away, not next to me. Odd. But I didn't question it. I remember reaching for the menu. Before I could open it, a waiter arrived with a dish. "She'll have the trout almondine," one of the men said confidently. Just like always. "Actually, I'm allergic to," I started. A soft hand touched mine. "She's fine," said the woman beside me. "She always says that." and the waiter walked away. I turned to Julian. He was smiling, drinking his wine, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. The conversation flowed like I wasn't even there, and yet about me. She's still working with the museum, right? She always loved impressionists. She hated wearing yellow. And everyone nodded. I opened my mouth to correct them, to say anything, and the woman beside me gently squeezed my arm. She's fine. She doesn't need to talk. Have you ever had someone narrate your life while you sat there silent? Like a ghost haunting your own body? The worst part wasn't that they got it wrong. The worst part was, they didn't. Everything they said was true. But I'd never told Julian those things. I'd never met these people. How could they know? That's when I noticed it. The painting on the far wall. A girl in a pale blue dress, standing in a garden. It was me. Down to the freckles. The scar on my chin. The slight crook in my left eye. I stared. My mouth went dry. The inscription on the gold plaque below it read, Clarice Wainwright, 1991 to 2018. Dead. She was dead. But she looked exactly like me. I stood up, the room spinning. And in the silence of my sudden movement, every eye turned to me. Every mouth smiled. Julian raised his glass. To Clarice, he said. And the whole table echoed. To Clarice. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't dinner. It was a ritual. And I was the only one who didn't know I was in it. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. You ever RSVP to something and feel it deep in your bones that you just made a mistake? Not in the I don't want to wear pants kind of way. I mean real dread. Like your signature just opened a door and you don't even know what's behind it. That's how I felt the second I agreed to that dinner. I didn't know why, but something felt wrong, even before I arrived. Let's rewind. Because the trap doesn't snap all at once. It closes slow, quiet, like velvet tightening around your throat. It started with that invitation. Remember I told you how it was written? Thick card. Gold embossed edges. The paper had texture, weight, like it didn't belong in this century. But what stood out? The name. Clarice Wainwright. Not mine. Claire Walters. Just close enough to pass if you weren't paying attention. But not me. I laughed when I saw it. I actually laughed. That's how far away from the danger I still was. Looks like they got my name wrong, I joked, holding it up to Julian. He didn't laugh. He took the card from me too quickly, fingers pinching it like it burned. No, that's an old name. A nickname, kind of. They might call you that. I squinted. But it's not my name. Julian shrugged, then looked me dead in the eye. Just go with it. Please. You ever get that twist in your gut when someone says, please, in a way that sounds like a command? Yeah, that was the first red flag I decided not to wave. Instead, I focused on what to wear. Which, by the way, he also decided for me. A light dress. Blue, if you have one, he said while pouring wine like it was a casual suggestion. They'll expect that. You'll look beautiful. That should have felt sweet. But it didn't. It felt rehearsed. Like he'd said it before, maybe not even to me. I wore the blue dress. On the drive there, I kept glancing at him. He wasn't acting nervous. He was calm. Too calm. Like someone returning to something they already knew, not introducing me to something new. We passed through farmland. Then woods. Then into nothing. I asked how far the estate was. Almost there, he said. But we've been driving for an hour. And yet, here we are. What kind of answer is that? I turned to look out the window. That's when I saw it. The same estate from the picture he once kept on his bookshelf. I remember asking him who the girl in the photo was, standing on the steps of a massive stone house. He said, that's no one. Just a family friend. He never mentioned the photo again. And now I was pulling up to that same house. The same steps. Same ivy. Same cold, gray stone. Only this time, I was the girl walking up them. The gates opened without a sound. No buzzer. No guard. Just opened like it knew us. The gravel under the tires crunched louder than it should have. Like the land didn't want us there. Or maybe it was trying to wake up. I know that sounds crazy. But that's the word that kept circling my mind as we drove up the path. Wake up. He stopped the car. The house loomed above us like a cathedral that had forgotten its religion. Stone walls. Gothic windows. Tall wooden doors with brass handles that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. Ready? Julian asked. Not are you okay? Not are you sure? Just ready? Like this was a performance. And I was expected to play a part. We stepped inside. A butler met us at the door. Yes, an actual butler. White gloves. Silent nod. He took my coat with a look that said he recognized me, but also pitied me. Julian handed him the keys, then turned to me. I'll be right in. Go ahead to the dining room. He kissed my cheek and walked away, without waiting for a response. I stood there alone in that silent hallway, listening to the sound of my heels echo on the marble. Every portrait on the wall seemed to follow me. Same family resemblance. Pale skin. Dark eyes. Sad mouths. At the end of the corridor, a door opened by itself. Not joking. Just swung open. And there they were. 17 people. Sitting. Waiting. All of them turned to look at me in perfect unison. Like clockwork dolls. Like they'd practiced. I took one step in and they smiled. Not warm smiles. Not welcoming. Recognition. I hadn't even said my name yet. And somehow, they already knew it. Or thought they did. Clarice, said a woman in pearls, standing. Her voice had weight. Authority. She walked over and kissed both my cheeks. You haven't aged a day. That's the line that keeps repeating in my head. Not, it's nice to meet you. Not, welcome. You haven't aged a day. I don't remember much about sitting down. I know there was a long table. I know there was a place card with the name Clarice printed in cursive. I know Julian was 2 seats away. And I know I didn't feel real anymore. Because no one asked me who I was. They just started talking. She's still with the museum, right? She loved that Van Gogh exhibit. She always hated salmon. Everyone laughed. Nodded. Smiled at me. Every time I opened my mouth to correct them, someone else answered. Not rudely. Not forcefully. Just confidently. Calmly. Like I'd already agreed to let them speak. And the craziest part? They weren't wrong. Those facts, the museum, the Van Gogh exhibit, the salmon, they were all true. But I'd never told Julian those things. Never posted them. Never shared them. So how did they know? How did they all know? I tried one more time to speak. Tried to say, my name is Claire. But a woman next to me, soft voice, delicate hands, gently squeezed my wrist and said, She's fine. She doesn't need to talk. And I stayed quiet. Not because I agreed, but because, in that moment, I wasn't sure I could. It felt like something had wrapped around my throat, not physically, but in my mind. A weight. A fog. A script. Then Julian raised his glass. To Clarice, he said. No one looked confused. No one corrected him. They all lifted their glasses in eerie unison and repeated. To Clarice. I didn't drink. I couldn't move. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure who Claire was anymore. And when I finally looked up, that's when I saw it. A painting on the far wall. A girl in a pale blue dress. Same dress I was wearing. Same scar on her chin. Same crooked eye. Same face. Underneath it. Clarice Wainwright. 1991 to 2018. Dead. She was dead. But she looked exactly like me. And just like that, I knew this wasn't a mistake. I wasn't here by accident. I'd been chosen. But for what? That answer was still coming. And when it came, it wouldn't be whispered. It would be screamed. Have you ever sat down at a table, looked around at every smiling face, and realized none of them were smiling for you? Because that's exactly what it felt like. The air was thick. Not warm, not cold, just wrong. Like the kind of stillness that only happens before something dies. The dining room smelled faintly of lilacs and copper. Don't ask me how I know what copper smells like. You just know it when it's there. Julian hadn't said a word since the toast. Neither had I. My voice felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. Like someone had checked it out of a library and forgot to return it. So I sat. And I listened. And the first course came. Not a menu. No waiter asking what I wanted. Just silver cloches being lifted in perfect rhythm, like synchronized theater. And there it was. Trout almondine. Pan-seared. Drenched in butter. Almond slivers so thin they curled like petals. Now here's the part that really messes with me. I'm allergic to trout. I know. Mildly. Not life-threatening, but bad enough to make me swell and break out in hives for hours. And I never eat it. But before I could open my mouth and say something, a man at the end of the table, regal, gray-haired, the type you'd call father even if he wasn't yours, casually said, "She'll have the trout almondine." It was always her favorite. Everyone nodded. Of course it was. And my plate was gently placed in front of me without another word. I looked at Julian. He didn't flinch. He didn't even look at me. He was buttering bread. Smiling. Like everything was normal. I cleared my throat. No one looked. I said, "Actually, And that's when it happened. The woman beside me, same one who'd silenced me before, gently put her hand on mine again. Not hard. Not forceful. Gentle. But in that way you stop a dog from barking when guests arrive. "She's fine," she said softly. "She doesn't need to talk." And then, she picked up her wine and kept sipping. Have you ever felt your body betray you? I sat there, frozen, as people passed dishes around me, commented on my life, laughed at stories about me. Except they weren't mine. Or were they? They talked about Clarice like she'd just stepped out of the room. Like she was getting a drink. Like she was still here. She always spilled red wine on white. She hated the cello, but she loved violins. Do you remember that summer she got lost at sea for 6 hours? I don't know how many times I tried to say, that wasn't me. But the words never made it to my mouth. Not because I was scared, but because somewhere deep inside, something kept whispering. What if they're right? The man at the end of the table, I would later learn he was Julian's father, Gregory, kept his eyes fixed on his food. Never looked up. Not once. Just sat. Silent. Eating. Like he wasn't hearing a word being said. But he was listening. I could feel it. Every time someone mentioned Clarice, he would twitch, just a little. A flicker in his cheek. A tap of his ring against the glass. Like a code. I started to notice it. That everything said about her, me, was filtered. Measured. Scripted. And every time someone said something off script, that ring would tap once. And they'd correct themselves. She hated, loved horses. She never liked, preferred autumn over spring. Tap. Tap. Correction. I wasn't in a conversation. I was in a performance. And every person at that table? They weren't guests. They were cast members. Then came the questions. Directed at me, but never meant for me. Are you still writing those poems about the lake, Clarice? She never published them, someone answered. She never wanted to, said another. I opened my mouth. I've never written. The woman squeezed my wrist again. She's fine, she repeated. Everyone smiled. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were being watched from the inside out? That something inside you, not you, but through you, was looking at these people and recognizing them before your mind could? Because that's what it felt like. Like somewhere deep inside, a part of me did know this table. This room. This conversation. Like it had happened before. Like I had lived it. Or maybe, died in it. I tried again. I whispered to Julian across the table. Julian. Please. What is this? He didn't even glance up. He just said, "You're doing great." Like I was on stage. Like this was a test. I didn't feel real anymore. I felt like someone's memory walking around in a borrowed body. Then the room shifted. Not literally, but the energy. It was during the third course, roasted duck, I think, when Gregory finally stopped eating. No warning. No movement. Just stillness. The kind that spreads like a wave. Everyone stopped too. No one said a word. All eyes slowly turned to him. Like animals waiting for a signal. He still didn't look up. But he spoke. Clarice. My spine stiffened. You've been very quiet tonight. I didn't respond. My voice was buried under 100 invisible hands. He raised his head, and for the first time, he looked at me. But he didn't look at me. He looked through me, like he was trying to see if she was in there. Then he asked, "Do you forgive us for what happened?" My hands trembled in my lap. I wanted to scream. What happened? What did they do? Who is she? Why did they think I was her? And then, a vision flashed through my mind. A lake. A small boat. A girl screaming. Something dragging her under. My chest seized. It wasn't my memory, but it lived inside me. I didn't answer Gregory's question. I couldn't. Because whatever was waking up in me, it wasn't going to let me speak yet. But what came next? What came after the silence? That was when the truth started bleeding through. And it began with a painting in the hallway of a girl who looked just like me, but wasn't. Have you ever seen a version of yourself that wasn't you? Not a mirror. Not a photograph. I mean a painting. Brush-stroked. Framed. Hung with care. Like you'd already been somewhere you never remember going. That's what I saw in that hallway. After Gregory's question, "Do you forgive us for what happened?" I had to get out of that room. My pulse was too loud. My thoughts too scrambled. I excused myself, barely audible, and stepped away from the dining room. Julian didn't follow me. No one did. It was like they expected it. The hallway was silent, dimly lit, ornate and old, like the rest of the house. There were doors on either side, shut tight, but one remained cracked open at the end. And as I walked past each wall, it was there again and again. Her. The same girl. The same face. Mine. Portrait after portrait. In different dresses. Different backgrounds. Different years. But always the same signature in the corner. Clarice W. Tell me, how would you react if you saw yourself painted as if you'd lived in different decades? In a 1920s flapper dress. In a 60s polka dot sundress. In a Victorian lace gown. One girl. One face. Multiple lives. Multiple deaths? I reached the last portrait. This one was different. The brushwork was rougher. Fresher. Less romanticized. It was her, the same face, but this time, the eyes looked wrong. One pupil slightly larger than the other. A faint bruise under the cheekbone. The smile, almost smug. And the background? A lake. Still. Black. Almost swallowing the blue sky behind it. And beneath the painting, engraved in the bronze plaque, Clarice Wainwright, 1991 to 2018. The one who never returned. I didn't realize someone was standing behind me until she spoke. It's uncanny, isn't it? I spun around. A woman. Maybe early 30s. Jet black hair pinned in a tight bun. Deep green dress that clung to her frame like ivy. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Lorraine," she said. "Julian's cousin." Or something like that. Something like that? I didn't respond. I couldn't. She stepped beside me, eyes locked on the painting. "She would have been your age now," she said softly. "Who is she?" I asked. That was the first thing I'd said aloud in what felt like an hour. Lorraine didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and touched the edge of the frame with careful fingers. Clarice was complicated. I stared at her. Was she a sister? Lorraine laughed once, sharply. "Oh no. God, no. She was Julian's everything." Until she wasn't. The silence between us thickened. I asked, "Why do I look like her?" Lorraine's smile vanished. "You don't look like her," she said. "You are her. You just don't remember." I took a step back. She didn't follow. She just kept staring at the painting like it would blink at any second. "That's insane," I said. "Is it?" "Yes." She finally turned to face me. "Then why are you here?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Lorraine nodded like she'd expected that. "Clarice died 8 years ago," she said. "But the family never really moved on." She tapped her temple. "They think you're her second chance. The body she needed." I shook my head. Julian never mentioned her. Not once. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "And you don't think that's strange?" I was silent again. She stepped forward, lowered her voice. "You think this was just a dinner? A meet and greet?" I didn't answer. "You were brought here," she whispered. "Not invited. Brought. Have you ever realized mid-conversation that someone might be trying to help you, but also might be playing their own game? Because that's exactly how Lorraine felt. Like someone who knew too much. Who liked knowing it. And liked watching others fall apart because of it. Why me? I asked. She smiled again. Because you matched. Matched what? Her head tilted, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then she leaned in way too close and whispered. They never told you about the test, did they? What test? She pulled back. Too far. Too fast. Then she walked away. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. Just vanished into the hallway shadows. I turned back to the portrait. Her smile looked wider now. I swear it did. The lake behind her seemed darker. And something about the signature at the bottom, Clarice W., had changed. There was a smear across the W. Like someone had tried to wipe it off. I needed air. I headed toward the back of the hall and found a door that led out onto a veranda. Cold wind hit my face like a slap. But it was real. Realer than anything inside. Below the railing, I saw it. The lake. The same one from the painting. Still. Black. Waiting. And as I stared at it, one question pounded in my head louder than the wind. What happened to her that night? Because she didn't drown. No, it was something worse. And if Lorraine was right, whatever happened to Clarice wasn't done yet. And neither was this dinner. But the next course wasn't food. It was the reason I had been brought here in the first place. And when I stepped back inside, they were already preparing to feed me more than I could swallow. You ever walk into a room and feel like it kept talking about you the whole time you were gone? That's exactly what I walked into. The second I stepped back through the door into the dining room, 17 faces turned to me at once. Not startled. Not surprised. Just expectant. Like I'd taken too long in the bathroom and they were ready to resume rehearsal. The dining room hadn't changed. But something had. Maybe it was the silence. Too practiced. Too synchronized. Maybe it was the fact that no one, not even Julian, asked where I'd been. They just picked up their glasses, their forks, their rolls, like I was back in place. Like the dinner couldn't continue until the puppet re-entered the stage. And I was the puppet. I sat down slowly. The seat wasn't warm. No one had taken it while I was gone. A fresh dish was waiting for me. Venison medallions in a wine reduction. Perfectly plated. Again. No one had asked what I wanted. Of course they didn't. Because Clarice always wanted this. Right? I didn't touch the food. I didn't speak. I watched. And that's when I noticed it. No one was really eating. Forks moved. Plates scraped. Napkins dabbed. But actual bites? Swallowed food? Almost none. Like they were performing dinner, not having it. The only one who really ate? Gregory. Julian's father. Still at the head of the table. Still with that slow, methodical rhythm. Chewing. Sipping. Staring straight ahead like he was waiting for something to happen. And the others? They talked. They talked and talked and talked. Not to me. About me. She still volunteers on Sundays, doesn't she? I remember when she learned to ride bareback in France. She never really forgave herself for the boat, did she? I stared at them. No one looked at me when they said these things. Because they weren't asking me. They were remembering me. Or worse, reminding me. But here's the kicker. Some of it was true. And not just Clarice true. Claire true. Things I'd done. Said. Felt. Moments I'd never told anyone. Never posted. Never written down. Private thoughts. Private fears. Like when Julian's aunt leaned in and said she always hated the sound of silverware scratching porcelain. Set her teeth on edge. I flinched. I hate that sound. Always have. But I've never told a soul. So how did she know? Let me ask you something. What would you do if someone started narrating your own mind back to you? Not just actions. Not just memories. Your thoughts. What happens when you hear your inner voice in someone else's mouth? Because that's what it felt like. A theft. Like they had peeled open my brain and were reading it for entertainment. And every time I tried to interrupt, tried to say, that's not me, that's not mine, the same thing would happen. Someone would gently touch my arm. Or pour me more wine. Or softly say, "She's fine." Always that phrase. Always with that smile. I turned to Julian. I didn't care anymore. I was done being polite. I whispered, "You need to tell me what's going on." He smiled, brushed a crumb from his sleeve. "I told you it might be intense." "No," I said. "You said they were traditional." "You didn't say they were." "Careful, Claire," he cut in. He said my name. Claire. Not Clarice. The whole room shifted slightly. Not physically. Emotionally. Like everyone heard the difference, even if they pretended not to. For a second, a tremor of confusion passed over the table. Then it vanished. Back to the performance. But not for me. Because I wasn't watching a play anymore. I was realizing I was the script. Someone asked me a question. I didn't even hear it. I just heard the answer. "She sees herself in the lake now," said Gregory, still chewing. "She remembers." "I don't," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "I don't remember anything." Because I'm not her. All eyes turned. The woman next to me, I think she was Julian's cousin or aunt, I still don't know, let out a soft laugh. "Not yet. Not yet." Then came the real test. Gregory set his wine down. He finally looked straight at me. Not through me. At me. "I think it's time," he said. Lorraine reappeared. When had she even left? And stepped up behind my chair. She held something in her hand. A letter. Cream-colored. Handwritten. Old. She slid it in front of me. "This is yours," she said. "I've never seen this before." "It's still yours," she said, and walked away. I looked at Julian. He gave me a small nod. "Read it," he said. The handwriting was elegant. Looping. Confident. "To my family. If you are reading this, it means I have returned. Or something close enough. Forgive me if I'm different. I don't expect to remember everything right away. But it is still me. Deep inside. I promise. Be patient. Be kind. I chose this." The letter was signed. Clarice. I stood up so fast my chair tipped backward. "No. This is insane. This isn't me. I didn't write this." "But you will," Gregory said calmly. "You always do." I backed away. "No. I'm not staying. I'm leaving." Lorraine tilted her head. "But you already agreed." "I didn't agree to anything." Julian finally stood. His voice gentle. "You did, Claire. You just don't remember yet." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small slip of paper. A contract. With my name, Claire Walters. And beneath it, my signature. I stared at it. It was my handwriting. The loops. The curves. The way I always dragged my S. But I'd never signed this. At least, I didn't remember signing it. The title at the top? Consent Agreement for Relived Occupancy. I ran. Out of the room. Down the hallway. Past the paintings of myself I'd never posed for. But as I rounded the corner, the doors were gone. Every one. Just walls. Paintings. And a mirror. A tall one. Full length. I looked into it. And for a second, my reflection blinked before I did. "Let me ask you something. What would you do if your own reflection started lying to you? Not distorting. Not glitching. Lying. As if it was no longer yours to control." Because that's what I saw. Not a trick of light. Not exhaustion. I blinked, and my reflection blinked first. It smiled a second before my lips even moved. Like it was ahead of me. Like it knew what I was going to do before I did. And in that moment, I didn't feel haunted. I felt occupied. As if someone else had moved in. I turned from the mirror and sprinted back toward the dining room. Only the hallway didn't lead there anymore. You ever been in a place where the architecture shifts? Like the doors you came through have vanished. The corners don't turn the same way. The floor creaks in patterns you swear weren't there before. That's what this place was now. Not a house. A maze. And I was the rat. Except I wasn't chasing cheese. I was chasing truth. Or maybe just an exit. I finally slammed into a door I hadn't noticed before. Old. Wooden. Carved with symbols I didn't recognize. But the knob turned easily. No resistance. No creak. Like it was waiting. Inside, no dining table. No portraits. Just a room lit with a single chandelier above a small desk. And on the desk? Paperwork. Dozens of sheets. Stacks of old agreements. Files. Photos. Photos of me. But not from tonight. From before. Photos of me walking to the store. Sitting in a park. On a bus. Reading in a library. Candid shots. Close-ups. All time-stamped. All from months ago. All before I met Julian. So ask yourself this. How does a family have a record of your life before you even know they exist? The answer? They were already planning it. I wasn't chosen by accident. I was scouted. Then I saw it. The contract. The one Julian had shown me at the table. Lying flat in the center of the desk. This copy was clearer. More detailed. At the top. Consent agreement for relived occupancy. Subject, Walters, Claire Ann. Match ID, 7CW. Match ID? There were more. A file drawer labeled, previous matches. I opened it. Inside, match 1, discontinued. Match 2, rejected. Match 3, deterioration. Match 4, reversal. Match 5, terminated. Match 6, non-responsive. Match 7, active, Claire Walters. I was number 7. Lucky me. I heard a door creak behind me. Julian entered. Calm. Always calm. He didn't look surprised to see me here. I figured you'd find it sooner or later, he said. I held up the contract. What is this? A gift, he said. I laughed. Bitter. You call this a gift? You don't understand yet. Then explain it, I snapped. Right now. No more riddles. No more, she's fine. Julian took a step closer. There's a part of you that remembers, Claire. No, there's not. You wouldn't have matched otherwise. I threw the contract at him. He didn't flinch. You knew about me before we met, I said. You stalked me. You documented my life. He didn't deny it. We watched, he said. Because Clarice chose you. Let me pause here. Because that sentence broke something in me. Clarice chose me. What does that mean? Julian explained. She had a plan. Before she died. She knew the ritual could be repeated. That one day, we could bring her back. But it required a vessel. A vessel. Not a person. A body. He kept going. She left specifications. Genetic markers. Psychological patterns. Even behavior cues. You matched 98.7%. Matched for what? I asked. For return. He stepped to the desk. Pulled open another drawer. Inside, a worn leather book. He opened it. Inside were journal entries. Clarice's. He flipped to a page. Handwriting in black ink. If the family wants me back, they'll have to earn it. I'll choose her. But only if she chooses me back. I shook my head. I didn't choose anything. Julian smiled. You signed it. I didn't. Then it hit me. Weeks ago. At his apartment. He'd brought wine. Said it was from his father's cellar. We drank. Talked. He handed me something. Can you sign this real quick? He'd said. I'm doing a survey for a psychology study. I laughed and scribbled my name. Didn't read it. Why would I? I trusted him. And he used that trust to trap me. I backed away. I want out. Julian didn't move. You can't. Watch me. I turned, but the door was gone. In its place? Another mirror. This one taller. Taller than me. I stepped toward it. My reflection didn't copy me. It was already there, waiting. Not matching. Watching. And then she moved. Not me. Her. She stepped forward, placed her hand on the inside of the glass. Mimicking nothing. Leading. And her lips moved. I read them clearly. Let me in. I stumbled back. No, I whispered. But the lights flickered. The room dimmed. And Julian said softly. It's not possession, Claire. It's merging. She has no right. She has every right. She gave this family everything. And they took her life. He walked toward me. Now they're giving her a second chance. By taking mine? He nodded. You said yes. My head ached. My chest was tight. And then, flashes. Not memories. Not quite. More like shadows of memories. A boat. Laughter. The feeling of being held under. A scream. A name. Gregory. Then nothing. And then Clarice's voice, not in my ears. Inside me. I don't want to hurt you. I just need to finish what they started. I dropped to my knees. I wasn't just haunted. I was hijacked. But what they didn't know. I was starting to remember more than they intended. Things Clarice remembered. Things they didn't want me to know. Because maybe Clarice wasn't just a victim. Maybe she'd been silenced too. Just like me. And if I could get to the truth. If I could dig deeper into her buried past. I might find out what really happened the night she died. And I might learn why she chose me. For her revenge. Section complete. Say go when you're ready for Chapter 6. Go. Chapter 6. The Girl Who Died Twice. Target. 1,000 to 1,500 words. Tone. Conversational, dramatic, YouTube expose. Cliffhanger from Chapter 5. And I might learn why she chose me, for her revenge. What if you woke up inside someone else's memory? That's how it started. Not a dream. Not déjà vu. Memories. But not mine. The moment Clarice whispered inside my head, I just need to finish what they started. It was like a dam cracked open. Images flooded in. Not blurry. Not symbolic. Real. The scent of lake water. The cold slap of wind. The sound of voices arguing in the dark. This wasn't the deal. She can't just back out. If she talks, we all go down. The voices weren't strangers. They were family. Julian. Gregory. Lorraine. They were all there. And they were screaming at Clarice. The night of her death wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. She had tried to leave them. Expose them. Whatever rituals the Wainwright family practiced, whatever secrets they kept, Clarice had wanted out. But she'd known too much. Too deeply. And they couldn't let that happen. So they ended her. Or tried to. I was still on the floor, shaking, the echoes of her pain still rattling inside me. Julian was at the doorway. Watching. Not smiling anymore. Not charming. His eyes had gone cold. You shouldn't have seen that, he said. I looked up at him. She didn't drown. No, he said softly. But you might? Let me ask you something. How do you fight someone else's memories when the people around you prefer the lie? Because that's what I was dealing with. A house full of people desperate to believe that Clarice was pure. Obedient. Tragic. Not defiant. Not vengeful. And definitely not a witness to whatever they'd buried. That's why I was brought here. Not just to host her. To replace her. To rewrite her. But Clarice hadn't come back for nostalgia. She came for the truth. And now, so had I. I stood up. I want answers. Julian didn't move. There's nothing more to say. She didn't die the way you told them. She didn't agree to this. She did, he insisted. We all did. And when she changed her mind? Silence. That told me everything. I walked past him. Back into the hallway. Back to the dining room. The guests were still there. Still eating their food like it was a script. Still smiling like the world hadn't shifted off its axis. I slammed my hands on the table. Every fork dropped. Every eye turned. She didn't die in the lake, I said. She was drowned. No one spoke. Not even Gregory. I saw it, I said. She tried to walk away. You stopped her. Still nothing. Then Lorraine said quietly it was necessary. Necessary. That one word, it told me how far gone they were. This wasn't grief. This was control. A legacy. A tradition. They didn't want Clarice back because they loved her. They wanted her back because she was useful. Because she kept their secrets. Until she didn't. She trusted you, I said, turning to Julian. I loved her. You killed her. He looked away. Gregory finally spoke. She was unstable. Emotional. She threatened the family. So you silenced her, I said. Gregory nodded, like a CEO confirming a merger. And then? Clarice spoke through me again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a scream. Liars. The chandelier shook. The air dropped 10 degrees. Glasses cracked on the table. The guests froze. One woman clutched her chest. Stop this, Gregory hissed. But it wasn't me anymore. It was us. Me and her. Merged. Let me ask you this. What happens when the vessel fights back? When the girl you tried to erase teams up with the girl you tried to use? Because that's what we became in that moment. One body. Two minds. One purpose. We weren't here for closure. We were here for justice. I turned to Gregory. You made a deal with something you didn't understand. He stood. You don't know what you're doing. No, I said. But she does. And then? The lights went out. Pitch black. All I heard was a voice behind me. Clarice's voice. Not in my head. In the room. Let me speak for myself. You ever hear a voice that doesn't just echo in your ears, but in your bones? That's what Clarice's voice did. It didn't whisper. It cut. It carved its way through that perfect little dining room, through the silver cutlery and the vintage wine and the family name engraved on the back of every chair. It was the kind of voice no one had heard in 8 years. And that's why it terrified them. Because it meant one thing. She hadn't stayed dead. Not like they wanted. Not like they planned. The lights flickered. One by one, the candles around the room flared higher than they should have and then dimmed again. The chandelier pulsed like it was breathing. I felt her, Clarice, stepping out from behind my thoughts. Not taking over, but rising up alongside me. It wasn't possession. It was possession with permission. For the first time all night, I didn't feel silenced. I felt amplified. And then I turned. Everyone else at the table was still frozen. Julian pale. Lorraine trembling. Even Gregory looked like he'd seen a ghost. And maybe he had. Because standing behind me, reflected in every piece of polished silver, was Clarice. Not as a corpse. Not monstrous. Not horror movie grotesque. Alive. Calm. Her hair wet like she'd just climbed out of the lake. Her dress soaked. But her face? Peaceful. Sharp. Whole. She looked at her family and smiled without warmth. You lied about me, she said. No one responded. So she said it again. Louder. You lied about me. Gregory finally stood. This isn't real, he said. She's a vessel. You're a memory. That's all. Clarice stepped forward. No. I'm a witness. And now so is she. She pointed at me. And suddenly, they understood. This wasn't just Clarice's revenge. It was mine too. Because let me tell you something. When someone tries to overwrite your life, rewrite your memories, break your will, it stops being just about survival. It becomes war. A war for your own mind. And this? This was the first shot fired. Clarice circled the table, slowly, deliberately. You called me unstable. No one moved. You told them I drowned. Still silence. You said I chose this. Julian's voice cracked. You did. Clarice turned sharply. I chose truth. Not this. Lorraine whispered, we were trying to protect you. No, Clarice said. You were protecting yourselves. She turned to me. Tell them what you saw. And I did. The memory of the boat. The fight. The hands. The cold. The silence. I spoke every word like it was being chiseled into the walls. Because I knew if I didn't speak now, I'd never be allowed to again. When I finished, the room was shaking. Gregory stepped back from the table. He looked small now. Not powerful. Just old. Exposed. He muttered something under his breath. A command. And suddenly, the rest of the family stood. In unison. 17 bodies. Eyes blink. Like puppets on a pulled string. I heard a low hum, like static. And Gregory raised his hand. Bring her back, he said. He didn't mean Clarice. He meant me. The empty me. The agreeable one. The one who let them talk for her. But it was too late. Because I wasn't alone anymore. And I wasn't the same. Clarice and I, we were merged now. And we weren't going quietly. The candles flared. The wind howled. And then, I spoke. But it was her voice. And mine. Together. We're not yours anymore. The glass shattered. Every single one. Portraits fell from the walls. And the lake outside? It surged. Rose. Like it was coming to collect a debt. Julian shouted something. I couldn't hear him over the roar. Gregory tried to run. But the front door vanished. Just like it had for me. The house didn't want them to leave. Because now it remembered. Clarice didn't just haunt this place. She was this place. Her voice. Her memories. Her pain. All woven into the walls they tried to bury her inside. And now? They were going to hear her. One by one, the guests dropped to their knees. Not out of reverence. Out of fear. Their mouths open, but no sound. Their eyes wide. Because she was showing them everything. The lies. The night she died. The deal they made to keep it quiet. The way they scouted girls like me. Vessels to preserve their narrative. To keep Clarice alive, just enough to control her. But she broke the script. And now? There would be no more versions of her. No replacements. Just the truth. Julian was the last to fall. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. I loved you, he whispered. And I said, you loved what I mirrored. Then Clarice said, and you killed what you couldn't. He closed his eyes. Then it was over. Just like that. The wind stopped. The candles went out. The lake receded. And the house was silent. Except for me. Still standing. Still breathing. Alone. Clarice was gone. Not trapped. Not erased. Free. And me? I was still here. But I was changed. I remembered everything. Not just what she showed me. What they tried to make me forget. What they tried to make me become. I stepped outside. The sun was rising. The house behind me? Crumbling. Piece by piece. Like it had finally lost the only thing keeping it standing. A lie. But what I didn't know yet was that this story wasn't just Clarice's ending. It was my beginning. And someone else was already watching me. Already choosing me. For something new. Section complete. Say go when you're ready for the conclusion. Go. Conclusion. The echo left behind. Target. 1,500 words. Tone. Reflective, dramatic, YouTube expose. Cliffhanger from Chapter 7. And someone else was already watching me. Already choosing me for something new. Have you ever walked away from something and realized it didn't walk away from you? That's what the Wainwright house did to me. It let me leave. But not untouched. Not unchanged. You can't host someone else's death and walk out the same person. You carry something with you. A voice. A memory. A warning. I didn't go to the police. You probably want to ask why. What would I say? That a dead girl spoke through me? That a family tried to overwrite my identity with theirs? That I watched a house remember the truth and destroy itself from the inside out? They'd call it trauma. Hallucination. Delusion. They'd say I was grieving someone I never knew. And maybe, in some way, I am. Because I didn't just witness Clarice's death. I felt it. Every heartbeat. Every breath. Every betrayal. Her fear. Her rage. Her silence. And her voice, when it finally broke through. It cracked more than just the surface. It broke a system. Let's go back to the beginning. To that dinner table. That long stretch of polished wood. The candlelight. The soft laughter. The way every word spoken for me landed like a lock on a cage I didn't know I was inside. The way they said, she's fine. She doesn't need to talk. You know what that line really meant? She's useful as long as she stays quiet. There's a reason I'm telling you all this now. Because someone will try this again. Not in the same house. Not with the same name. But somewhere out there, another Clarice exists. Another voice in a body she didn't choose. Another girl slowly being rewritten. And the people doing it? They won't call it possession. Or erasure. Or control. They'll call it tradition. Or healing. Or worse, love. But I've seen what love looks like when it's weaponized. I've worn it like a costume. Smiled when it asked me to. Sat quietly at the table. Listened to my life described by people who didn't earn it. Never again. I kept one thing from the house. One page from Clarice's journal. The final entry. It read, "When I'm gone, don't bury me again. Let me rise where I was silenced." So that's what I did. I didn't bury her. I let her rise. And in doing so, I rose too. The house is rubble now. Overgrown. Condemned. But sometimes, I still dream of it. The hallways. The mirrors. The smell of lilies and blood. Sometimes I see the lake. Still. Quiet. Waiting. And in those dreams I see her. Clarice. Not angry. Not lost. Just watching. Not because she wants back in, but because she's making sure I don't let anyone take my voice again. You ever wonder what it feels like to know someone tried to replace you? To be selected for your similarities, not your soul? It makes you question every choice you've made. Every yes you gave too easily. Every time you stayed silent to keep the peace. That's what this whole story was about. Silence. And what happens when someone fills your silence for you. So now I speak. Everywhere. Loudly. Clearly. I tell people my name, Claire Walters, with emphasis. I don't let people finish my sentences. I don't let people answer for me. Because I remember what it felt like to be surrounded by voices. And still not have one. You might be wondering, what happened to them? To Julian. To Gregory. To the rest? No one knows. The estate was found abandoned. No bodies. No records. Only the smell of mildew and burnt cedar. Like whatever kept them together dissolved the second the truth surfaced. Some say they disappeared. Others say they fled. I say, they were finally forced to hear what they'd silenced. And they couldn't survive it. Do I regret going to that dinner? Every day. And yet I'd do it again. Because it gave me a weapon more powerful than escape. It gave me clarity. And it gave Clarice something even more powerful. Closure. Not the kind where everyone hugs and cries. The kind where the lie can't breathe anymore. The kind where the silence breaks permanently. I told you in the beginning that this wasn't just a story. That it mattered. That it was happening now. Because here's the truth. Someone is always speaking for someone else. In relationships. In families. In systems. They speak over you. For you. Through you. And if you don't reclaim your voice, they'll keep doing it. Until you forget what yours sounded like. So if there's a part of this story that rang familiar, if you've ever sat at a table, literal or metaphorical, and felt your thoughts filtered, your truths rewritten, your no turned into yes by someone else's mouth, let this be your sign. Stand up. Speak. Even if your voice shakes. Especially if it does. Because someone somewhere is trying to name you. But only you know what your name really is. My name is Claire Walters. And for one long, strange night, they tried to call me Clarice. They tried to speak for me. They told me I was fine. They told me I didn't need to talk. But I wasn't fine. And I do. So now I'll ask you, who's speaking for you? And are you okay with that? Because if not, it's time to get your voice back. Before someone else decides what you'll say next. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if you've ever felt spoken over, erased, replaced, speak. You know what no one tells you? It's not the silence that breaks you. It's the return to noise. Because once you've lived in silence, real silence, not peace, not quiet, I mean the kind where your voice is gone, you start to realize how much of yourself you let slip away. One sentence at a time. One nod. One smile. One sure, that's fine. Until you can't tell which thoughts were yours and which were spoken into you. And maybe that's what they were counting on. The Wainwrights weren't just trying to resurrect a girl. They were trying to rewrite history. To take a soul, bend it into a shape they liked better, and press play. They didn't want Clarice. They wanted compliance. They didn't want me. They wanted a mirror. But here's what they forgot. Even mirrors shatter. I think about that moment often. Standing in front of the mirror in that house. Watching my reflection blink out of sync. That wasn't just a glitch. That was a warning. Because when your reflection doesn't match anymore, when the image no longer agrees with the script they gave you, you're not broken. You're waking up. Some days, I still feel her. Clarice. Not haunting me. Not lingering. Just brushing past my thoughts like wind through curtains. Like she's checking in. Not because she's trapped, but because she remembers. And she wants me to remember too. Because forgetting is how they get you. Forgetting is how it starts. And for those who think this is just a story, a ghost tale, a creepy dinner anecdote, what if? Ask yourself this. How many of us are already halfway into someone else's story? How many of us let others write the script because it's easier than correcting the narrative? And how many of us call that survival? They told me, she's fine. She doesn't need to talk. But now, I am talking. Not just for Clarice. For anyone who's ever been nodded over, spoken through, decided for. Anyone who's been shaped into something convenient. For the girls renamed. The boys boxed in. The quiet ones who weren't born quiet, just taught silence. This isn't just my voice anymore. It's ours. So if you're watching this and you feel that crack, that echo inside you, don't ignore it. Don't bury it. Dig it up. Speak it loud. Because someone is watching. Someone always is. But this time, make sure they're hearing you. Drop a comment below if you've ever had your story rewritten by someone else. Tag someone who needs to reclaim their voice. And if you've ever been called too sensitive, too dramatic, or told to just go along with it, send them this story. Not because it's scary, because it's real. And because it's time we stopped sitting quietly at tables that never gave us a seat.